Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning to everyone who is attending today's webinar on the 7 ways to increase your billable time and how to implement at your firm. Our guests who are out on the East Coast hopefully are enjoying perhaps a late lunch, while if you're joining us from the West Coast, maybe you're sipping a late coffee. And for those of us sitting here in the Midwest where I am, we're right on time with the lunch hour. My name is Scott Clayson. I'm the Director of Marketing at TimeSol Corporation. We are a Minnesota company who's been providing online billing, timekeeping, and project management solutions for law firms since 1999. Now, I am super excited today to show you all the 7 ways you can increase your billable time and how to go about implementing at your firm. I think you're going to find that most of these tips are easy to implement and kind of fall into the category of, oh yeah, why haven't I done this before? Or perhaps of, yeah, I know it's hard to put into place with my particular law firm, and hopefully we can overcome some of those hurdles today. So a couple of housekeeping items quickly before we get started. I think this webinar should last approximately 45 minutes or so. If we have time near the end, we will do a quick little Q&A session. Everyone here is on mute during this webinar. However, there are going to be a few times I'm going to ask for a little interaction, and we'll do that via the chat feature that they have here on join.me. And where you'll find that is up at the top of your screen. I think you should have like 3 or 4, maybe 5 green kind of bubbles that allow you to do different things with the settings of join.me, but you should see one of those circle icons should be a little thought bubble or dialogue bubble. And if you click on that, that's where you can enter chat questions or answers or things like that. And that's where we'll kind of do some interactive stuff here during the course of the webinar. And by the way, I also am recording this session and will be sending out to everyone who attended a recording of this. So if you do need to duck out early, and you know, you'll be getting a full recording of this along with the slide deck that I'm going to present. So don't feel compelled that you necessarily need to take notes either. Although I know as lawyers, you can't help but take notes, I know. So, but just want to let you know that all this information I'm going to present will be available to you in 2 different forms after the webinar. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the agenda. What are we going to cover here today during this time that we're together? First, I want to make some introductions, kind of let you know a little bit about who I am, where I came from, and tell you a little bit more about TimeSol and why we feel this is a really important topic. And then we'll chat for a few minutes about, hey, what is kind of the current state of tracking time? You know, why are you even here? And while we obviously TimeSol caters to the legal industry, there perhaps could be some others sitting in on this that are non-lawyers who still have to track their time as well. So some of this information is not just, you know, legal specific, but just in general, anyone who needs to keep track of their time to send out bills to clients can benefit from figuring out, hey, how do I get more billable time in my day? And then we'll get into the actual 7 ways, the methods and the processes that we've learned as a software company over the years from talking with our clients and seeing some of these best practices, because we get a lot of support calls from people who have lots of questions on how to use the software properly, and these 7 things have kind of come to the surface over the years that we've been around. And then we'll look at some of the objections, the fact that, hey, you know what, you might really like what you're hearing, but the big question is, will this work for me and my firm? And you might see some of these tips and do some eye rolling, like, God, we can never get that done, you know, at our law firm for whatever variety of reasons. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the ways to overcome those hurdles, and that really comes down to having the right tools in place to implement the changes that we're going to talk about, because we could talk circles about how to do this, but unless you have the tools to do it, it's really just talk. And then I have a deal for those attendees here today where there's a bit of a special at the end you'll want to sit through that I hope you'll find will be worth your while. So That's what we're looking to do here in the next 45 minutes or so. All right, well, let's start. I mentioned that we do introductions about, who I am, where I came from. I've been with TimeSol for just over a year now after spending 20 plus years off and on in the amateur sports industry, overseeing the marketing for a large amateur sports complex here in the Twin Cities. It was the largest soccer complex in the world, an 8-sheet ice arena, a golf course, and that was really fun. And then I transitioned to this work about a year ago, and I found that, I was able to kind of see marketing changing from the traditional kind of print collateral material, traditional advertising sort of mechanisms to digital marketing. And frankly, whether I'm putting out marketing materials and doing marketing activities to get people to come to a youth soccer tournament, or whether I'm getting them to try to become interested in, billing software for law firms, a lot of the activities are really the same and are very transferable as far as the skill set goes. I also used to be a high school history teacher for several years, so I do love doing these webinars because I feel like I can kind of get back to my instructional roots a little bit, and I do like teaching. It is one of my passions. And then you can see from this picture I have of my wife and my son recently. We didn't get to Mexico. That was about a year ago. This picture was taken. But I am a California native, and I do prefer to escape the Minnesota winters that we have here in Minneapolis, where I'm located. So if we can get away, we can. I think my blood's just a little too thin being born out in California, even though I've been in Minnesota for many, many years. And you'll find me most nice summer evenings on the weekend trying to figure out how to grill the perfect steak for my family. I love tinkering around with grilling and barbecuing and making ribs and pulled pork and briskets and all that sort of fun stuff. So that's a little bit about who I am and where I'm coming from with this from TimeSol. So let's talk a little bit about who we are as a company. Now, TimeSol was founded in 1999. It was born out of the Thomson Reuters Elite brand and has been spun off and held privately since 2006. Our CEO actually worked at Thomson Reuters and decided he's going to spin it off because in many ways, TimeSol was ahead of its time. It was a web-based, we are a, in the cloud, web-based billing software that's been around since the late 90s. And as you can imagine, using software through your web browser was very, cutting edge back then. So Thomson really didn't kind of know what to do with the product then. And our CEO sort of saw TimeSol as this is the vision that everyone's going to be moving to cloud-based software eventually. So in that 17 plus years that we've been around, we've had no security breaches whatsoever. And our uptime, we've been down, I think, a total of about 2.5 minutes over the last 18 months. We run everything through the Amazon Web Services with multiple redundancies in various geographic locations around the U.S. and so on. So we're highly secure in that fashion. And as a result, our customers have billed their clients just over $5.7 billion in the time that we've been around. So we know what we're talking about when it comes to legal billing and timekeeping, because we've had a lot of time entries and a lot of bills flow through our system. And we do think really that we provide the best value and the best service by our legal billing experts who are on staff here, because when you call our support line at TimeSol, you're not just talking to support personnel who have been brought in and just sort of trained on how to use the software and what buttons to push. We actually hired people who came from law firms who have done legal billing. Some have come from law firms as big as 400 attorneys, some 10 to 15 attorneys, but they've walked the walk that a lot of you have to do. So we feel that brings a higher level of support service when you use TimeSol. Okay, so my question is, why are you here? What motivated you to join this webinar today? And I have some ideas based on just my last year of work with TimeSol and talking to law firms, but I'd love to have you all use that chat feature I mentioned at the top, that little thought bubble icon, and tell me what motivated you to sign up for this webinar, sit here and listen to me pontificate about billable time. So take a minute, let me know. Just click on that little thought icon bubble and start typing kind of what motivated you. What are you hoping to get out of this webinar today? And I'll let you guys do that for a minute here. All right, I put a kind of a filler question up there. Nobody has put anything in the chat box yet, so we must have a shy group today. I'm hoping to somebody can tell me, why are you here? I have some ideas. Okay, we have a couple coming in. Encourage attorneys to record as they go to capture more time rather than wait until the end of the month. Yep, you're on the right track. If somebody's a new office manager and they're trying to learn as much as they can to maximize their firm's revenue. Yeah, and that's what TimeSol is really kind of all about. We really feel like we're a company that wants to help you grow your profits in ways that you may not necessarily thought of. And efficiencies in how law firms run their business is a huge component of that. So we're on definitely the right track there. Yeah, somebody wrote in they want to help assist attorneys to prioritize their time and get as many billable hours. And really that's what it's all about, right? I mean, that's the profit that a law firm is going to make, or just and I should say the revenue is purely going to be based on billable hours. And I know from talking to attorneys, it's sometimes hard to get them on the phone because every minute they're not billing time is a minute they're losing a potential revenue. So it's challenging. So we'll try to cover some of those challenges here. Provide information to our staff on how to increase and capture billable hours. Yeah. So these are all good responses, and thank you for chiming in. I think we're all on the right track of what we want to learn here today. I look at it like this. It's kind of human nature to avoid what we dislike, right? I mean, tracking time and generating invoices is probably the least fun part of being a lawyer and running a law firm. A lot of you, if you're, for those of you that are sitting in that are lawyers, you went to law school to practice law, not track your time, not to generate, you didn't like, yeah, I'm going to become a lawyer because I love sending out invoices. No, you want to practice law. So this is kind of a bit of a pain. Yet without that essential task of tracking your time well and invoicing promptly and collecting money, there's no way to keep your practice going. That's kind of the caveat there. Distractions. Let's be honest, and this gets back to what some of you put down. There's a lot of other non-billable things to get done. So do you know what those things are? That's one of the things we'll bring up in one of these tips, is talking about what do we do with the non-billable hours that we're working. There's a lot of distractions to tracking your time and doing it well and doing it promptly. And then sometimes it's just, it depends on the software you have, it's not easy to do. How easy is it to enter your time? How easy is it to generate your invoices? If the tools you're using are a pain in the butt, you're going to be less likely to use those tools. And you don't like necessarily doing it to begin with. And then if you have you have the tools in place that are, old, antiquated, hard to use, you don't like, well, then it becomes a self-perpetuating thing, and you're never going to be able to capture all those billable times. Because that's the thing, you have to ask yourself, can your firm honestly say it's collecting all the billable time possible? Now, Clio, it's a competitor of ours. They're a large practice management software suite. They put out kind of a bombshell report back last September, and it really showed that there was a dramatically lower number of billable hours as a percentage of hours worked than previously thought, especially by solo attorneys. I think it was less than 50% of a solo attorney's day was spent actually doing billable tasks. So, okay, that's why you're here. How can your firm increase those billable hours? And like I mentioned, TimeSol has talked with hundreds of law firms. We've developed these 7 best practices because we really do think there are ways to capture more time and achieve higher revenue, because you have more billable hours coming into your firm. So you don't end up being like that person there who's just staring at the pennies, hoping that they can figure it out. And, am I making enough money? Am I growing my revenue? Is that stack of pennies getting higher every month? So, are you excited? I'm doing a real build up here, aren't I? To get into the 7 ways. So let's get started. Okay, tip number 1. Create a documented time tracking policy. Actually write it down. It's time that you start thinking about time as money. breaking for a 90-minute lunch, that may be fine at your firm, but that could potentially be a $350 expense if you think of it as money. Time is money. That would need partner approval. If you're going to do an expense for $350, you probably have to get the partner to approve that. So the answer is that your firm really should think about and establish a documented time policy. And I mean that by writing it down. And this policy really should include the next 6 tips that we're going to cover. This is the overriding kind of higher level first tip, is have a time tracking policy. And then we're going to fill it in with these other tips that I'm about to show you. And I can tell you, again, for somebody who's worked in other industries, writing down policy changes the mentality and the culture of a firm or a business. Just the exercise of doing that can really change how you're going to think about tracking time. Okay, so more than anything, big takeaway, create that time tracking policy. And we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Okay, number 2 tip, establish a firewall between invoicing and time entry. And what does that mean exactly? Well, first of all, it means time entry shouldn't be created when you're creating draft invoices. But what that also means is that, and I've talked to a lot of law firms, don't have your people doing the billing also creating time entries for their associates. Have your associates be the ones entering that time. And somebody wrote that in the chat section about, encouraging the attorneys to record as they go. That's exactly right. That's what you want your attorneys to do. Now, for some people, there's from both sides will say, hey, look, I'm the office manager, I'm the assistant to my attorney, and that attorney gives me a spreadsheet or a Word document or maybe just a legal pad, and I create the time entries for them, and that's my job. And if I don't have that job to do, that kind of time entry job, I won't have a job. And I think I would like to encourage people to think about that, eliminating that process of entering time for somebody, which again, let's be honest, it's kind of just data entry work. That could free up people at your firm to other activities that could benefit the firm. So instead of that person spending several hours a day punching in time cards, which is just kind of manual work, if you will, maybe they could be using that time more proactively to work on the marketing of the law firm, to acquire more clients. Okay, so there should be that separation of church and state, a firewall between invoicing and time entry. And what this does is it's going to ideally eliminate the time between actually working on that billable item and when the time entry is made. I've talked to some law firms. Well, the attorney told me, well, our policy is I keep track of everything in Excel, and then I send it off to my assistant once a week, and they enter that time. So great. So the assistant's getting that document, the assistant's getting that document, say, on a Monday morning for the week previous, and has to look at it and make sure that the time entry from that previous, 7 days old, is being inputted properly. Okay, you want to do it as much as you can in real time. And perhaps that includes a policy where time entries are reviewed and confirmed each week, or maybe every day. Do you have senior partners who have to approve or review time? Okay, they should never have to question time on an invoice. By the time an invoice, a pre-draft bill, or a pre-bill or a draft bill, whatever your system calls it, by the time a senior partner is looking at that, there should be no questions about the time entries themselves. And if you have an approval hierarchy, perhaps you have associates who have to have their time approved by the senior partners, that should happen in almost real time, or should be approved at least long before it gets ever put on a draft bill. Okay, and maybe it's a day lag time, at the most a couple of days, but that person who's charged with approving time should have the tools in place to allow them to approve those entries in a very timely fashion. So with that in mind, then your billing person every month, they're not going to be rushing from one associate to another because one of the senior partners had a question about, hey, is this all the billable time? on that pre-bill. I thought Doug spent 4 hours in court. I swear to God, he did that one day. He was gone all morning, wasn't he? But it only shows here that he was in court for an hour and a half. Can we go double check that? Those sort of situations get eliminated by having that firewall between the invoicing and the time entry. And this gets back now, we're getting even deeper now into, hey, here's a policy to implement. Enter all their time by the end of the day, by the end of each work day. Create that expectation that all time is going to be entered daily. A lot of associates I know I've talked to will sheepishly tell me that they wait until like maybe Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. to calculate and enter their time for the week. Okay, and so what it ends up being is a game of kind of fill in the blanks as they try to get to that 40-hour mark. Maybe they forgot about a phone call. Maybe they missed out 15 minutes. They judged that the meeting that they had at the coffee shop with a client lasted 45 minutes when it really lasted an hour. This perhaps could be the most important time tracking policy that you could implement. Okay, because it's a real culture shift mentality, and this has to be, you have to get a buy-in from everybody that you're going to have everyone enter all their time by the end of the day. Like Fred Flintstone there, as you can see, as he punches in his time clock. Okay, here's a tip that I think a lot of firms don't necessarily think of as a way to increase their billable time. So we recommend and advocate the best practice is that you capture all the time that people are working, not just their billable hours. And this is where you're going to find the inefficiencies. This is one of those ways to really count time as money. If the senior partner knows where all the time has been spent, they can adjust and shift the resources in the firm accordingly to maximize efficiency and the use of time. Maybe there's an associate who's spending 7 hours a week on a task that could be or should be handled by a non-billable employee. And think about this, as a solo, perhaps, a solo attorney, are you doing more non-billable tasks because you want to save money? Like that Clio report that was put out back last September I mentioned, talked about, I think it was less than 50% of a solo's day was spent on billable hours. You might think, well, I have to do all these non-billable things, and I want to save money. I don't want to hire a business manager or a paralegal. Well, have you really looked to see maybe the time you make up in more billable hours will more than cover the cost of hiring a business manager or a para? You have to look at the trade-offs there. If I'm only billing 3 hours, 4 hours out of an 8-hour day, I'm never going to get ahead. If I hire somebody to do all, 6 hours of non-billable stuff, and all of a sudden I can bill maybe 6-7 hours myself, you can probably more than cover the cost of hiring that person. So capturing all the time, not just billable time. And yes, that is going to mean, again, a culture shift of coaching your associates that, like, if you're doing a task that isn't going to a specific client or matter, it's still part of your workday. We need to know what it is and how long you're spending on it, because maybe we don't have you do that anymore. Big thing. It's a big way to find the inefficiencies within your firm. Even within TimeSol myself, I don't get, I'm not, as my work, I don't track billable hours per se, but I do keep track of the amount of time I'm spending on each one of my tasks. So I can see, like, where some efficiencies or inefficiencies. Am I spending 2 hours on something that I could hire a consultant or hire a programmer or somebody else that they could probably do it in a half hour, and I can go on to more important tasks that are going to really help the company. Okay, tip number 5 here. Now, do a review of missing time once a week. Have I mentioned it's a good idea to separate timekeeping from billing? Know before billing if time is missing. Can't emphasize that enough. Perhaps you assign a person who their whole job is reviewing maybe every Monday the missing time from the previous week. It's easy then to work with your timekeepers to rectify any time missing because there's very little time elapsed. Now you might be saying, like, wait, hey, Scott, I thought you said at the beginning there, one of the earlier tips was implement the policy of having them enter their time at the end of each day. So that means they wouldn't need to do a necessary review of missing time once a week. And that could be true once that policy is in place. But again, do you have the right tools to know that somebody's, all the associates have put in all of their time every day? And this is perhaps a way, review that missing time once a week. And perhaps you see like, oh, hey, they're putting in their time, but they're only putting in their billable time, not their non-billable time. I'm doing a review here and it's showing me that they billed 30 hours, but what did they do the other 10 hours? I know they were there. They worked an 8-hour day or whatever it might be, but they only billed for 6 hours and I have no idea what the other 2 hours they were doing. So this is, again, review the missing time once a week before time gets too far away. Because again, I can't emphasize this point enough. The first discrepancy on time missing should not be happening when reviewing draft bills. Okay? Should not be happening when you review those bills. Draft bills, pre-bills, whatever you want to call them, again, should never be a place for, oh no, surprises. That should be just affirming all that good legwork you've done ahead of time. Because again, you'll waste time trying to backtrack and find that missing time and so on. Get the policies going up front and you'll be more than rewarded at the back end. You might find that the amount of time it takes to actually create your draft invoices and send out your bills each month are reduced dramatically. There was one firm we worked with that moved from time slips to TimeSol, and she went from spending 5 to 6 days a month generating her bills, just working on bills, and this was like a 15-person firm, to like 2 days to do all her bills in TimeSol. And for many people, you can do it in just a matter of hours, depending on how detailed your invoicing is. So again, it's a way to dramatic. Now she's got 3 extra days a month to do other activities for the firm. Okay. This is a super powerful way to make sure time is entered the day the work is completed, and that is to close out time entries every week. And this is going to show how serious you are about timekeeping. What does this mean? This has to do with your software. It should allow you to close out each week so that your timekeepers can't enter time in the system from whatever date you choose backwards. And I'll show you how that works in action. But that's going to show a seriousness, the importance, the culture shift about your timekeeping policy, so that come Monday or Tuesday or whatever it might be, one of your associates can't go back and try to enter time that they missed on the previous Wednesday because you've locked them out. That's a powerful tool. And again, it goes back to, well, if maybe some of these other policies were enforced better, you wouldn't have to do this, I want to say, draconian sort of move to close out entries every week. But let me tell you, if a lawyer or associate can't enter time for something from the previous week because the system won't allow them, they're pretty quick like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm following this policy, or else I'm going to be in trouble and have to do the walk of shame to the business manager's office or the senior partner's office and say, I have some time I forgot to enter last Tuesday, and be punished or whatever it might be. They have to get donuts for everybody for the next week, the kangaroo court that you're going to implement. And then our last tip here is about commission. Okay, if your firm has this in place for you're paying commission to your lawyers, creating goals for your associates to pay, if you're paying your timekeepers based on the commission of funds received, not on how much was billed. So when they know that their efforts on time tracking and efficiently entering their time is going to affect their own paycheck, they may very well find that they can do this task super well. You'd be amazed how good they'll become at overcoming or putting in their time if they know it's going to affect what they bring home in their paycheck. Okay, that's a little less because I know some firms don't use a commission incentive, so it may not be as applicable to some of you. So those are our 7 tips. Some of them work together, some of them are kind of independent, some are dependent on another. But the big question is, can this work at your firm? You may not be the decision maker at your office when it comes to policies and procedures. So what do? Make sure the person who has to buy into it gets the buy-in. Use examples with them about times not all the time got billed. just even the argument of examining your billable versus non-billable time, just that alone could show you how resources are allocated, and it can make a timekeeping policy worth it. So identify the stakeholders, the ones who are in charge of the policies and procedures, lay out your arguments, use examples, and that will go a long way towards implementing some of these things at the firm. Because as we all know, with any organization, if there's not buy-in at the top, then nobody's going to buy into it. So you have to kind of play that ground game and lay the groundwork to make sure the right people understand why this is important for your firm. And the other thing I would say is start small. Just have a very simple policy in place. Again, I know lawyers, they love, I'm not a lawyer, but writing in the very legalese, with policies and contracts and all that. Hey, just make it simple. We don't have to have a lot of where-ins and therefores and that sort of thing. Put a very simple, it can be just a one-page policy in place. Maybe it's just that you're going to enter all your time at the end of the day, period. That's your policy, boom. Or we're going to track all billable and all non-billable hours. That's it, end of story. Get something started, something going, okay? And then make sure you have the right tools. Make sure they're in place to enforce those policies. Because most objections are going to center around that argument there. Well, it's not very easy for me to enter my time, therefore I don't want to do it. I'd rather have you do it when you generate the invoices, or once a week, or whatever it might be. Well, we can't actually close out our time entries. We just don't have it. It's not possible. I can't get a missing time report to figure out who has missing time. So you got to make sure the right tools are in place, because every time you have the right tools, that lowers the objections. The bar goes down. It's very easy now for people to see this isn't so bad. So let's talk about the tools to implement these changes, because all these tips aren't worth much unless you have those tools. And a lot of that starts and ends with the right software. So here's some things your billing and timekeeping software should include. Mobility. How easy is it for your timekeepers to act time? If you show it's easy, then you can establish that firewall where they're entering their own time. Okay, they can enter all their time by the end of the day because it's really easy to do, and that they'll have the ability to capture all their time, not just their billable time. And let me show you how this works in TimeSol. Okay, so I'm going to go to the login screen for TimeSol, and I'm going to log in. And when you log into TimeSol, you land right on the time entry screen itself. There's no clicking around trying to find where do I enter my time and all that. You get right to the time entry screen, shaving off, again, the time it takes to make a time entry. Any good timekeeping and billing software worth its salt should have a mobile app. Almost all the web-based ones do. I know some of the ones that you have, the traditional client-server ones, are getting there. TimeSol has a mobile app. So it's very easy when your attorney is going off-site for a meeting to track their time. Same thing with a tablet form. Whether with TimeSol, our browser app here is responsive, so it's very functional on a tablet, an iPad, whatever it might be. Now, the ones that are really good, like TimeSol, have going an even further step in this process and making it easy to enter time. We have a time sync widget. It's a tool that sits on your desktop here. Now, I know it looks somewhat antiquated. It's kind of retro with the look to it, but it's very functional. All you have to do is, I can be anywhere. I could be looking at doing some website stuff, whatever it might be, and I can have my time sync app up here. Maybe I'm going to do work on a brief or something. I just choose the client and matter, choose a task code. Is this billable or non-billable? Write some notes. We have abbreviations you can do here, and just start tracking your time. And guess what? You don't have to be online to use this feature, to use this tool. You could be sitting at a coffee shop in Starbucks and you're kind of nervous about being attached to the Wi-Fi to Starbucks, or your internet has gone out completely. You're somewhere where you don't have internet access. Doesn't matter. You can still track your time. You can see the timers running. You're on the phone, whatever it might be. You get off. You save that entry, and then when you are back online, you can just sync it. and it's going to come right to the database. Now, the next time I go back to my time entry, if I hit refresh here, there's the time entry that I had created in that time sync tool. So again, it's that flexibility, that mobility, okay? I mean, this is a fantastic feature to use, the time sync tool, the mobility. It will lower lots of barriers. So let's talk about then about flexibility. Okay, how flexible is the software that you're using? Is there an approver process? Can you set a time entry lockout date? How easy is that to change? And again, let me show you in TimeSol how that works. I'm going to, let's talk about the approver process, for example. If you have an approver, I'm going to log out as this. This is my admin person with this demo account that I have. I'm going to log in as just a regular timekeeper in this system, or in TimeSol. So you can see they don't see quite as much in here. They can just choose, okay, I have a, I'm going to double click. I'm going to choose a client, a matter. I'm going to put in a description. Maybe I'll even, here's the abbreviations I have, and the feature of TimeSol, so you don't have to keep things over. I'm going to save and new. And as you can see, I did this on one previously as well. This says that this has been submitted, this time entry. Hasn't been approved. It's only been submitted. So then as the approver, I'm going to go back into the other account. I'm the approver here for him. So I can go here and take a look. What's all the time I need to approve? Oh, here it is. Here's all these time entries of his I need to check off. I can approve them. I can change them, edit them. I can put private comments to him. I can put public comments that'll end up on the invoice. In TimeSol, you can also choose to have these approvers receive an email notification that they have time to approve. Now, they don't come at you fast and furious every time a time entry is made, because that would kind of bog down your inbox. But you will get notified twice a day, once at midnight and once again in the morning, that you have time to approve. You get into this real-time habit now of approving the time. So by the time me, as Scott Laidlaw, the attorney, my dummy attorney here, when I get to looking at draft invoices at the end of the month, I've already approved all this time, or whoever needs to approve it has approved it. We at TimeSol, you can have approval levels 9 deep. So if somebody needs to have, if there needs to be 3 or 4 or 5 people who need to approve time, you can do that. You can set that. So you got to have tools that have are flexible. Okay. Now let's talk about, we talked about the time entry, closing out your time entries. So what do you, in TimeSol, you go under the time setting here, and you can say, hey, lock out. Nobody can enter any time from April 28th backwards. Last Friday and backwards, they can't enter time. So how does that look for the rank and file timekeeper? Let's take a look. We'll log back in as my kind of regular attorney. And he's sitting here. It's May 3rd, or excuse me, it's May 2nd. Oh, shoot, I forgot. I need to put in time on the 27th. So I'm going to click on the 19th. I'm going to click on that date. I totally forgot about entering time. Okay, well, here, I'll just sneak in here and do it. I'm going to put in, I know I worked 4 hours on that. Okay. No, you can't. You're locked out. You can't enter times from whatever date you as an admin person within TimeSol chooses. Pretty powerful tool. If you think, make sure that whatever software you might be using now can handle this, and you'll find that time entries will get entered in a very timely fashion if they can't enter time. And you can make it, you could lock it down where it's every day, where, if you wanted to get real serious about it, I suppose. Okay, now let's talk about the thoroughness of the software. Okay, in TimeSol, you want to be able to see, or I should say this before we get talking about thoroughness. You want to be able to, what's the flexibility? How easy is it for me to see a missing time report, for example? What's the flexibility of that? There's a couple ways in TimeSol. I'm going to log out and log back in as the main admin person here. And as you can see, it's pretty easy to move back and forth for me here. So you may have noticed when you're looking here, we have a time entry calendar. And I'll show you April. It's very easy for every associate themselves to see How many hours have I entered per day? How many per week? What's my total monthly hours? What amount have I, billed, or am I going to bill? Now, for an admin person, you can choose to be able to see everyone's time. So I can see Tony Hill here, the time that he's entered. I can see, this is my way of doing that missing time check, if you will. If you want to do it in this way, you can. You can also, we have reports. We have a missing time report that we kind of talked about, where you can choose either to put in daily or weekly totals. Let's say daily. We expect our attorneys to work 8 hours a day, or let's say 9 hours a day. We kind of put the nose to the grindstone, Monday through Friday, and let's include just these two, Tony Hill and Scott Laidlaw. And let's use a time date from April 24th. We'll do it weekly, do a weekly missing time report. And let's generate that report. So now I can quickly see on this report that for each day, like on Monday, he didn't work 9 hours, he only worked 8, and so on. So you can see a missing time report. And you can customize that, the thoroughness of it, the flexibility of it. I can say, well, let's just do it weekly. And we expect our attorneys to work 42.5 hours a week. And let's generate that same time period and see what the missing time is now. Oh, and you can see that Scott Laidlaw worked just a shade under that 42.5 hour minimum, and Tony Hill 1.4 hours. Now, if I say, hey, they're only going to work, we only have a requirement of 40 hours a week, it's not going to generate the report. It's going to say, hey, sorry, no data found. So again, the flexibility, the thoroughness of what you can see within your software is huge. In TimeSol, we even have a dashboard so that associates themselves can see, hey, here are my target billable hours based on the criteria I put in. Here's how many I've actually billed, or excuse me, actual hours worked, billable hours worked. You can see the difference quickly at a glance, like, man, he's working that many non-billable hours? That's crazy. And I can set this to be like, okay, I just did it for the quarter, but let's do it for the year and see what his year goals are like. I can lay it out here and say to December 31st, my target billable hours at this rate, 300 hours is about normal, I think. Let's go back and look at the dashboard. And you can see I'm doing pretty well here. I'm pretty much on track with my billable hours. My total number of hours worked. So this, again, the difference between these two is your non-billable stuff. Okay, so you can do that. And again, you could see that for your other attorneys. If you are an admin person, you can say, hey, what's the amount of money that I've billed? What's my targets versus actual collected? Haven't collected that much money this year in this demo account. Okay, so again, your software should have mobility, it should have flexibility, and it should have thoroughness. If you have all three of those, you'll be able to overcome any of the objections of why you can't implement those tips. And then the other thing is like, what's the right policy, that's going to work for your firm? And that's kind of the answer. The one that works for your firm is the right one. Okay, it's really that simple. And I'll go back to what I said before. The exercise of writing down your expectations is the most important thing you can do. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect right out of the gate. Just get a policy, and that'll be the right policy to start. I promise. Okay? So in summary, here's our 7 tips again. And again, I will get this to everyone. They'll get a recording of this, and I'll send you the slide deck as well. Create a documented time tracking policy. Establish a firewall between who's doing the invoicing and who's entering the time, and keep them separate. Have all your timekeepers enter their time at the end of the day, all their time, capture all the time, not just billable time. It's a way to find your inefficiencies. If you need to, do a review of the missing time once a week. Use your software for that purpose. These should be the tools that help you. Close out your time entries every week if you need to. Maybe that's a way to start the policy. It's kind of like when I was a school teacher, my discipline, we always had a saying, the first 2 weeks of the school year should be where you discipline the kids the most. Set the really high expectations. It's always easier to loosen up the reins a little bit, but you can't get back. You can't tighten down the reins once you've let the horse out of the barn. Okay, so maybe you start with, hey, I'm going to close out time entries every week and see how that affects the culture change. And then you could lighten up from there perhaps. And then the commission incentives, when they see the incentives they have through a dashboard or an easy way to see how many hours they've billed or how much time they've put in, you're going to be much better off in the long run. Okay, so we're running up on the clock here. It's been about 45 minutes. I thank you all for sitting through this webinar. If you have any questions, please send me an email, scott.clayson@timesolve.com. And before I get to, there are a couple of questions I think that have come through here, a couple of comments. For those of you who are TimeSolve customers, and there are some I know that are sitting here today, if you send me an email and let me know the one thing you learned from this session today, maybe it's something about the software you didn't even know about and you've been a TimeSolve customer, I'll buy you a $10 Starbucks gift card. I'll buy you a cup of coffee for sitting through this and for learning something, hopefully, okay? That's the deal I'd like to make with existing TimeSolve customers. So just send me an email, let me know you sat in on the webinar, and I'll send you a $10 Starbucks gift card. For those of you that are not TimeSolve customers, you're new to TimeSolve, here's the deal I have for you. If you sign up for a 30-day free trial with us, you go to timesolve.com, and when you do that, you use a promo code 7ways, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. If you become a paying customer, I'll send you a $100 Amazon gift card. You have to become a paying customer for 6 months. That's my caveat. It just can't be a fly-by-night where you sign up, put in your credit card information, and a month later you ditch the system. You were just pretending to get a $100 gift card. You have to be for 6 consecutive months signed up and using TimeSolve. I will send you a $100 Amazon gift card. Okay? We'll pay you because we're that confident you're going to love using TimeSolve. So again, to sign up, let me walk you through the process to sign up for that free trial. Okay? It's very simple. Go to timesolve.com, and when you land on our website, you'll see lots of orange buttons all over the place to start your free trial. It'll bring you a little pop-up, and you fill in your first name, your last name, your email, and then just click on Start My Free Trial. And it's going to bring you to this second page where we ask for your firm name, your phone number, and just if you're an attorney or not an attorney. This promotion code field, that's where you want to put that promo code 7ways. Okay, so you type in 7ways there and then launch your free trial. You'll get an email then to activate your account. Sometimes those emails, as we know, can end up in junk folders if you have a really buttoned up junk spam detector. So just be aware of that, but most people don't have a problem. But that's the way to register for your free trial, okay? So we encourage everyone to sign up for a free trial, learn a little bit about TimeSolve. That comes with free support during your 30 days, free support from our legal billing experts, training sessions, much training as you need. You can sign up for an hour-long training session to get started, and then any help you need after that, we're more than happy to take a phone call. And that goes for any existing TimeSolve customer. If you feel you just need a refresher, or you want to learn about something that you're not sure if we can do it, and sign up. Call us, our 1-800 number on our website, call our support staff. We'd be more than happy to schedule a training. You can always call us at this number right here, okay? So that is going to do it. I will, if there's any questions, this is a time where we can take some questions using that chat bar, or the chat icon up at the top of your screen. Otherwise, thank you everyone for joining me today. I will send a follow-up email with a recording, with a link to the recording, along with the slide deck that you can use. And I'll stick around here for a few minutes to answer anyone's questions before I officially end the chat. So for those of you that need to move about your day, again, thank you for joining. I hope you got some usefulness out of this. And I hope you take a look at TimeSolve and see if it might meet all the needs to increase your billable time and increase your profits. So thank you, everybody. And again, I'll stay here for a couple of minutes to take any chat questions. I did see somebody, I don't know if they're still on. They said earlier about they use this tool at their firm. The time sync, about adding the no charge option to the drop down menu. Yeah, that is one thing we do need to, if the time sync especially, make sure it works properly. I know in the regular TimeSolve, when you're logged in to your account, and again, you have to kind of check these. You have the ability to choose billable, non-billable, or no charge. You can set that for each professional. You can allow them or not allow them to enter that information. You go to permissions for each person, and you can say, can they update the billable type? So that's one thing you can do. One thing that I've done for like my demo account is I've created a client and a matter called Laidlaw. That's my name of my dummy, from a non-billable. And I've set it so that anything I add to this client and matter is automatically non-billable. But I can then track those hours for non-billable items you might do and use a description. And then in our reports that you run, you can see like what are the non-billable activities that somebody's doing. So that's one option too for tracking billable time. Does the time report include non-billable hours? Yes, it will. That's a good question. And then, yeah, somebody did mention, yeah, you do not have that option on the Time Sync app. You don't. You're right. It's just billable or non-billable, not no charge. The no charge is only through the actual app. So, yeah, the time report, how do you include the non-billable hours? It doesn't include the non-billable hours. You could do a time entry report, and you could say, show me only non-billable. And that could be real simple. Let's just use the professional, just Scott Laidlaw, and generate a report. So you could just quickly see, you know, here's the non-billable activities that somebody did. And then if they put in a description, you know, like did marketing work, cleaned the filing cabinets, that's what I have for this one. So you can at least see what the time is that they're doing. So yeah, very easy to do with the reports. Oh, the missing time report. Well, the missing time report it's just a real cut and dried, simple report. To be honest, it's not going to necessarily show you. It's going to show you. It's based on the hours worked that you've designated, and it's going to just tell you yes or no, basically, that somebody has achieved the hours worked that you've set. So that's why I mentioned, like, if you put in that we want everybody to show that they've worked a 9-hour day, it's just going to show you for the time period you designate, you know, kind of yay or nay in the missing time report. And for this is, I think, probably more applicable to larger firms. Here's these other three kind of dummy people I have, or dummy lawyers. I haven't entered any time for them. It'll just show you, like, by day, for example, what I did here, the missing time, what was billable or non-billable, you know, we don't know. We just know they're missing some time that they've entered. Where I think you can take a look here at the time entries, and let me show you. This might be answering your question a little bit. Let me go back to this Scott Laidlaw, and I know you find a time entry that I know he has a non-billable. Oh yeah, okay. So this person here, or this time entry day, he's got 3 time entries. Right over here where it says NB, that automatically tells me that's a non-billable time entry. So it's not part of the report, but it is an easy, quick at a glance way to see if somebody has, you know, what non-billable time they've put in. Yeah, the question is, yeah, for example, if someone has 8 billable hours and 1 non-billable, do they meet the 9-hour requirement? Yes. It's just going to, like, it's going to show that they've entered 9 hours worth of time entries. How many of those, how much of that time is billable and non-billable? It doesn't show in that missing time report. Yeah, good question. The way you would kind of break it out between, okay, well, they worked the 9 hours, how much of that time was billable, how much of that time was non-billable is one of 2 ways. Either take a look on the actual, as the admin person, you can take a look at those days and see how many non-billable hours they worked by looking at the NB, or you could run a report like I showed you of their time entries and just run the non-billable, or run both and then take a look to see what was billable, what was non-billable. But the missing time report itself is just total missing time, both billable or non-billable. I mean, a person could work 8 straight hours of non-billable time and not show as missing time. So if it was that, it'd be missing billable time report, I guess, instead of missing, just generally missing time. So hopefully that answers that question. Any other questions as we're looking? So question coming in again about at the end of the month, how do you process the non-billable time? I guess I'm not exactly sure what you mean by processing that time. Are you talking about on an invoice? Like, I guess I need a little bit more clarification on what you mean by processing the non-billable time. If you have a chance to type that. Okay, you'll just reach out to me. Great. Yeah, do that. Just send me an email and I can try to cover that. You may mean, and I don't know, again, you can reach out. There is a way, again, the billable type here, there's actually 3 ways to enter the billable type in our time entry screen. Non-billable won't show up on an invoice. No charge, if you select it as a no charge time entry, it will show up on an invoice. So the client is aware that there was time that you worked on a matter that you're not billing them for. So there's 2 differences there. But yeah, you can reach out to me if you need more clarification. Okay. Any other questions about what you learned today? See, we have 9 people, looks like, still hanging out. So again, I'll send out a recording. We're bumping up against the hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'll send out a recording or link to the recording along with the slide deck. So again, thanks everybody for joining. I'm going to officially end the webinar now. If you have any other questions, please send me an email, scott.clayson@timesol.com. Thanks everybody, and have a great day.